Let's talk about when you started your last firm. You started out, was it just you? Did you have any help with you, staff, anybody in the beginning? How did you do that?
Yeah, it was me on my laptop in the spare bedroom of our apartment when I started Aaron Thomas Law. I, initially had no help. There were some of the counties that weren't even on e-filing yet, so I was the person that would go and copy, pleadings and drive over to the post office myself. I had the little stamps.com scale on my desk in my apartment. Sometimes I would have to drive to the actual courthouse, clerk's office to figure out how to get something filed because, I'd never done the paralegal's job before. And now I was the lawyer, I was the secretary, I was the paralegal, I was the receptionist, the whole nine.
Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. Join your host, Jonathan Hawkins, as we explore the fascinating stories of successful law firm founders. We'll uncover their beginnings, triumph over challenges, and practice growth. Whether you aspire to launch your own firm, have an entrepreneurial spirit, or are just curious about the legal business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. I'm Jonathan Hawkins, the founder of law firm GC, a law firm that represents lawyers and law firms in business-related matters. Excited to have our guest today, Aaron Thomas. He's the founder of prenuptial.com. And Aaron, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, and that's what I was going to say. Aaron Thomas, founder of prenuptial.com. I'm a longtime family law attorney, been practicing law for 20 years, family law exclusively for almost all of that time, for most of that time, and recently founded prenuptial.com.
So, we met, I looked it up, I think it was about a year and a half ago, and I remember we went and had lunch, and, you were telling me about what you were doing and what you were thinking about doing, and it was just right up my alley. I remember walking out of there thinking, man, this guy, I like this guy. He thinks like I do. And so I want to sort of walk through a little bit of your history, and maybe we'll start at sort of undergrad real quick, and then sort of take us through sort of where you are now. So where'd you go to undergrad, and what'd you study?
I went to Emory University. That was my kind of tie to Atlanta. I'm from Memphis originally, but came down to Atlanta for college. I got my degree in political science, knew I was going to go to law school from before I even started college. So whatever was going to get me there easiest was kind of my route.
Okay, so you knew it. After undergrad, did you go straight to law school? Did you take any time off?
I took 1 year off. I'd already gotten into law school. I deferred for a year, worked and paid off my college credit cards and saved up a little bit of cash, and then went to law school the following year.
Nice, and don't leave out where you went to law school.
Harvard Law School, yes,
Yeah.
Harvard Law School, yeah, is where I went. They let me in, so I took them up on the offer.
Impressive. So then after that, you came back to Atlanta. Did you go straight into family law or something else?
I didn't. I went to law school assuming that I would just work for the biggest, baddest New York law firm that I could get into. And after one summer there, I realized that was not going to be the life for me. I came back to Atlanta without a job, didn't really know what I was going to do. Ended up working for Habitat for Humanity in-house for a couple of years. I figured I can do some good while I'm trying to figure out, what I want to do with my life, and decided I wanted to litigate. And nobody litigates more than prosecutors and public defenders. So from Habitat, I went to the DeKalb County Public Defender's Office here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was there for 3 years, got some trial experience, and then a family law firm needed somebody with trial experience. I had it. They recruited me in. And so I kind of really stumbled into family law. It wasn't like something that I, sat down with all of the options, thought about it, and picked this from a list. But it was kind of where I ended up, and family lawyers go to court, and I like going to court, and so it was a good match.
Cool. So you were at that firm for a while, and eventually you went out and started your own firm, right? Or did you leave that firm to start a firm, or did you do something in between that firm and your firm?
Yeah. So interestingly, when I was working for the family law firm, I was paying off my student loans like, many of us did. And I was trying to get rid of them on such an accelerated schedule. I was basically, living on one of my 2 monthly paychecks and putting the other one towards paying down debt. And after doing that for a while and got rid of my loans, it struck me that I could, at that, currently 50% savings rate, that I could save up, a good amount of cash and do kind of what had been a dream trip for me for a while, which is, I'd had this dream of taking a year off and traveling around South America. And so that's basically what I did. Me and my then girlfriend, now wife, both left our jobs at the same time at the end of 2013, and we spent 2014 traipsing around South America.
Nice. So you stopped practicing law completely. No remote law or anything, right?
No remote law. I wrote legal articles for a couple different websites while I was traveling, just to have, some spending money coming in, but I was not practicing law. My wife actually came back to the U.S. after 12 months, and I wanted to continue working on my Spanish, so I spent another 3 months in Central America before coming back in mid-2015. Yeah, started my practice.
So where did you go down there? I'm curious.
Yeah. So we spent the first 6 months in Ecuador, where my wife's family is from, and then we spent probably 2 to 4 weeks each in Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina, a little bit in Uruguay, and then Brazil. And then that's when my wife came back to the U.S. And then I went and spent 3 months in Panama, Costa Rica, and most of the time really on the coast of Nicaragua in a little beach town, a little surf town there. So yeah, nice. Experience of a lifetime. Yeah.
I did that in between undergrad and law school, went down, spent about 3.5 months in Costa Rica. And I did not want to leave, but I ran out of money. And I had a job down there, but they said, it was September, and they said, you have a job, but it doesn't start till January, which was the busy season. And I was like, I don't have any money to stay till then. So I came back to the States expecting to go back, but then never did. So, but yeah, I loved it down there.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
All right. So then you come back and is this when you start your own law firm?
Kind of. I wasn't even 100% sure. I knew that after you pull off, 15 months in Latin America, that kind of changes the scope of options in your brain as to what is possible. At least it did for me. And so all I knew was I wasn't going to go back and just become an employee at the firm that I'd worked at previously. I toyed with the idea of, starting a couple other different types of businesses. But that summer of 2015, I had a couple of my former clients reach out to me and say, hey, you did a great job on my case previously. I need to go back to court, or, I got married again and I shouldn't have, and I need your help. And I said, yeah, I will help you. And, I liked the people that were reaching out to me. I wanted to help them. And, I figured if I'm going to do this, I might as well do it right. I hung up my shingle, started my law firm, and the rest, as they say, was history.
Yeah. So it was only family law, right? Or did you do other stuff?
I only did family law.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we met, you were still running your firm, I guess, the immediate preceding incarnation of your firm when we met. And I remember you talking about, hey, I've got this other idea. So talk me through that.
Yeah. So my law firm, my previous law firm, was Aaron Thomas Law, and had grown it, had built it up over, a number of years. But even from the early days, I wanted to develop a niche in prenuptial agreements. Shortly after the time that my wife and I got back from Latin America is when we got engaged. My wife is also a lawyer. And so for us, it was a foregone conclusion that we would have a prenup of our own. One thing I picked up doing family law was, how necessary they are, how, beneficial they are, how much they save time and heartache and stress and money down the line for my clients. And so I knew I was going to have one, and we really set out to write, kind of the perfect prenup. Like if we were to write a prenup that not only would prevent against a messy divorce, but like actually help us stay married, what would that look like? And, once I kind of developed that, friends and other people were like, you've got to make this a thing. You've got to tell other people that this exists. Most people have a negative view of prenups, and I wanted to do a positive view of prenups. It has taken that entire time for me to kind of figure out how to make that niche work. The original iteration of it was, I think back in 2016, I started a website and we called it We Nuptial. And you can probably see where I was trying to go there. It broke the rule of, don't be cute or clever, be clear. We were trying to take it as, like this is a we nuptial. It's, you're doing it together with your spouse and it's a good thing. But the next iteration of it was georgiaprenups.com. So you could probably guess the lesson I learned from that first iteration. Once we were georgiaprenups.com, nobody asked what it was that we did and where we did it. It was the other end of the spectrum was very clear. And then 2 years ago is when I, negotiated the acquisition of the URL that we use today, prenups.com.
And so now it's not limited to Georgia. You're going national, right?
That's right. Yeah. We're trying to go national. My ethics attorney reminds me to say multi-state until we're in all 50 states. But yeah, that's the ultimate goal is to be coast to coast provider of prenuptial agreements.
Yeah, and so I remember when we met the first time, I think you had 2 or 3 attorneys working for you. You had several paralegals. You had a big firm, a decent firm going with lots of work. You're probably making pretty good money. And then I feel like it was within a month or 2, we talked again and you're like, everything's changed. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Like what happened and what'd you do?
Yeah. So the firm we were at 8 people. It was myself, 3 attorneys, 3 paralegals, my marketing coordinator, and, lots of, it was a culmination of a lot of life events that kind of led me to want to make that change. But at the end of the day, this is what was going to, one, this has been my dream project forever. And I realized that you're never going to build it in 2 hours a week that you have left over after you are, running, a pretty busy, growing law practice. You can't break into, what I was trying to do in a couple hours on the side. And this was also what was going to give me the freedom to be more location independent, spend time with my family up in Memphis, and, even really be more present for, my wife and my daughter. And so all of those things coming together made me want to make the leap and go directly into only doing prenups.com. So yeah, we closed the family law firm down in the end of August of 2022. And since then, it's been 100% of my focus on prenups.com. I had, a lot of cases that I kept after that date, clients that I'd grown close to or, trials that were coming up. So I was still technically practicing family law cases until probably March or April of 2023. But that was the transition. And now I'm 100% doing prenups.
The fact that you did that, I know how hard it is to build a firm. I've been at several firms. I'm building mine. You built up, just finding people, getting the work, all of that, even from the boring stuff, getting the systems in place, the technology, payroll, all of that stuff. It took you a lot of work to get where you were. You're probably making, pretty good money, and to have the fortitude to then just say, all right, I'm letting it all go. What were you thinking? How did you convince yourself this is a great idea?
Yeah. Good question. And everything you said is true. I'd grown it. We were doing well. It was successful. Absolutely loved the people that were working with me. That was far and away the hardest part of the entire process was, going to my team and, letting them know that the firm was going to be closing and that certainly I was going to do everything I could to help them land in as good or better of a place. And, luckily enough, within a couple of weeks of making the decision, virtually everybody on the team had multiple offers to go somewhere else. Some people, chose that time to strike out on their own and start their own practice. And I was able to support and still, am supporting those people through that. But, I went to, honestly, my wife was a big part of it. I went to her when I had the idea and asked her, what she thought about me potentially, making this move by the end of the year. And her response to me was, end of the year? How about the end of the month? And so I really could not have done it without her support and kind of, pushing me on. I think, part of it was, was wrapping my mind around what I was leaving behind in closing this law firm that, like you said, I mean, this was my baby. I mean, I ate, drank, and slept growing ATL from 2015 to 2022. It was not just a daytime weekday job for me. It was a big part of my life. But I think what we really focused on was, the upside of what things could look like if this idea that I had could actually work. If I could do something that I felt passionate about and that would give me and my family additional freedom, and also kind of the fear of, if I don't take this leap, the bigger the law firm gets, the harder it is to walk away from. And if I didn't take that leap then, I might never do it. And there's never a perfect time, but we had a little bit of savings in the bank, and I ripped the Band-Aid off and, I made the switch.
Well, until you bring up a good point, I know I've felt it. I know I've talked to a lot of lawyers that feel it. You've got your spouse, your kids, or whatever it is. You have family obligations, other obligations, and it's hard to walk away. And I think a lot of people are scared to walk away from things and pivot from where they are. I think, I talk to a lot, I'm sure you have too, talk to a lot of lawyers that are unhappy with their current situation. They feel trapped and they feel like, I can't leave this, but they can. Now, I'm not going to say it's easy. I'm not going to say you can go flip a switch immediately, but you can do it. But the key is, I think you gotta have a supportive family behind you, because they're along for the ride. And probably without that, maybe you wouldn't have made the jump. I don't know.
Oh, no way I would have made the jump without the support of my wife in this. She knew it was going to mean, a dip in income, and she's got a busy, tough career herself in law. But I think she also knew how long I've been wanting to do this. And, good or bad, she is sold on the vision and probably believes in me more than I have myself, at certain times. So, yeah, that was a huge part of it. And I think, we both have that mentality, having taken time away from the practice of law previously and come back, and both ended up being in a position far better than what we left behind. When we quit our jobs in 2013, people thought we were crazy. And, like, how are you ever going to get back? Is anybody going to hire you after that time away? And, not only did we kind of get back to where we were, but we ended up in a better place. And so I think because we both proven that to ourselves previously, it was easier to say, we've done it once, we'll do it again. And, the idea is you'll end up in a better place afterwards.
That's the cool thing. So, I want to, in a second, sort of go back and talk about sort of the building of your prior firm before you've pivoted here to prenups.com, but you've done it before, so you can do it. You sort of made some mistakes before, probably learned some lessons. You know what to do now, a little bit easier, although you're doing it on a bigger scale, than just Georgia and maybe just Atlanta. I don't know how far your scope was before, but yeah, let's take a few steps back. Let's talk about when you started your last firm. You started out, was it just you? Did you have any help with you, staff, anybody in the beginning? How did you do that?
Yeah, it was me on my laptop in the spare bedroom of our apartment when I started Aaron Thomas Law. I, initially had no help. There were some of the counties that weren't even on e-filing yet. So I was the person that would go and copy, pleadings and drive over to the post office myself. I had the little stamps.com scale on my desk in my apartment. Sometimes I would have to drive to the actual courthouse, clerk's office to figure out how to get something filed, because I'd never done the paralegal's job before, and now I was the lawyer, I was the secretary, I was the paralegal, I was the receptionist, the whole nine. So yeah, I was a true solo at the beginning.
So how long were you a true solo? How long till your first hire, and who was that? What role was that first hire? I'm curious.
The first person that I brought on was a paralegal that I'd worked with at my previous firm, and she initially came on as just a contract paralegal. we knew each other. We were friends. We'd worked together for years and knew that we worked well together. And I desperately needed the help, I'd say probably 6 to 9 months into starting my practice. So she came on board in that first year. And then probably a year after she was working with me as a contract paralegal, I made her an offer to be a full-time employee, and she transitioned over to that role.
So looking back, do you wish you had hired her sooner?
You always wish you had hired
yeah.
the help sooner. You know, there's this like common, I know you know it too, there's this common misconception or fallacy that people have of, I can't afford to hire the help. But hiring the help is what allows you to afford them in the first place.
You know, you've heard it. We've all heard it. I mean, we've all experienced it. It's a scary first step when you've never done it before. I mean, before I started my firm, I was always at an established platform, mid-sized firm, and everybody was already there. And then if we had to hire somebody else sort of did all that. You know, at most, maybe I might interview somebody, but you know, all the other stuff just got taken care of. But then you're on your own, and it's up to you. And it's, you know, a lot of lawyers think this is a cost coming out of my pocket and it's expense, instead of, wait, no, this is really sort of an investment. And it's not like, you know, you're married to this person forever and ever and ever, so to speak. If it doesn't work out, then you can sort of part ways if you need to. But so you finally, you get her on full time, and then at some point you start hiring attorneys. Take me through that process.
Yeah. So, you know, the first probably 3 years of practice, full years of practice, 2016 through 2018, a lot of the growth that happened was honestly in my mindset. I, you know, started doing some coaching and learning more about business. I mean, I read every book, I listened to the podcasts, I joined the websites and the newsletters to try to take in everything I possibly could about running a business. And I, you know, kind of wrapped my mind around the idea that, you know, kind of what you just said, that you bring people on, if it doesn't work out, you know, obviously you can part ways. You hope that doesn't happen, but you know, try to treat it as an experiment. You know, you bring somebody on board, and if it doesn't work and you can't afford if you can't afford them, then it's not in anybody's interest for them to stay on. The first big hire that I made after my paralegal was my marketing assistant. And a lot of people raise an eyebrow at that because, you know, that is not a billable hour person. They are not directly generating revenue for the law firm. How can you afford to pay, you know, someone just to do marketing for you? But it had become clear to me how important it was for me to have consistent marketing efforts going out. Prior to that, I've been doing what a lot of small, you know, solo or small law firms do, which is when you run out of work, you go and you market and network and do coffees and shake people's hands and ask for work and, you know, touch base with your former clients. And then once you get busy, you stop all the marketing efforts and it all dries up until you go back through that cycle over and over. And the only way you break out of it is to come up with a system to consistently have marketing efforts happening even when you're busy. And so I brought on a young lady who had a marketing degree from Georgia State, and that was really probably a big turning point in my practice. I had to hire another attorney probably within 4 or 5 months because it worked so well.
Nice. You know, the other thing that, you know, I've experienced, I'm sure you have and everyone has that's done this, when you hire them, you know, it's money out the door, there's some stress there, but then, you know, you've got to train these people, onboard them, and it's, you know, you're doubling your workload, at least for some period of time. It feels like it, at least. And then eventually you see, you know, the relief, I guess, hopefully. Tell me about that.
Yeah. No, I've heard it described as a J curve, and that's definitely accurate in my case in terms of, you know, things go down before they, you know, shift back up. I had the, you know, having the marketing person, having the paralegal on board, you know, making sure all of the pieces fit. Everybody knows what they're doing. People have enough to do. It's clear what people are supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it. Developing the processes in a trial and error approach, which you have to. You're not gonna eliminate errors, on your first time trying to build it. And so all of those pieces were, part of the puzzle. But once my marketing person was in place and she knew what she was doing, and my paralegal had the freedom, because she had honestly been doing a lot of what my marketing assistant ended up doing, which was not her best use in my firm. She was freed up to do what she does best. I was freed up to do what I do best, and things started moving, far more smoothly than they had prior to that hire. And that kind of sold me on, okay, this is the approach I've got to take.
And so you ended up, I think you said you had 3 attorneys or so, and, pretty decent sized staff before you sort of pivoted and shut your firm down, or the old version of it. How much of your time was, client work versus firm work or marketing or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, probably, I'd probably say it was 50-50 in terms of my time that was spent actually working with clients. I was still kind of the primary litigator, the courtroom litigator for most of the cases. So, even though every case that we had, there was another attorney working on it and kind of, managing a lot of the day to day, I still had to stay up and knowledgeable for every single client that was in the firm. But I did have a good amount of time to spend on the marketing and, the financial controls and the management of the staff and, even the HR, I mean, when you're in a small business, mm-hmm. the person at the top is wearing 4 or 5 hats at any given time, as I'm sure you know.
Oh yeah. And, this may be a mindset question. I don't know. Did you find it hard letting go and delegating, or was that pretty easy for you?
Oh no, I didn't. It was not. It was not easy to delegate. I mean, it is funny because the same things that make you successful, in the initial parts of building your practice, the attention to detail and the, controlling every aspect of your client's experience and, taking everything from step 1 to, the very end of the case. Those are the things that will break you later on in the growth of your business. And so it was really difficult to let go of the idea that I wouldn't be copied on every single email that, goes into or in or out of the firm, or that I wasn't going to be on every single phone call, or that I didn't get to make every strategic decision in a case as it progressed through litigation. So, putting people in a place to be successful and then trusting them to do the things that are going to be best for the case is a huge shift, and probably another thing that hampers, I think, a lot of business owners in growing past a certain point where they can no longer control everything under the roof of their business.
I mean, the thing you said a minute ago, the things that made you successful in the beginning, I mean, that's worth repeating there, because a lot of people get stuck there and they can't move beyond it. I mean, if you're going to grow or scale, you're going to have to grow as well and learn different skill sets. And like you said, you got to let go. And I mean, a lot of lawyers have a lot of trouble letting go. It's tough, but if you want to get beyond just you working all the time, doing everything, you're going to have to learn to do that. And it sounds like you did, so that's good.
At the law firm GC, our team of experienced attorneys provides knowledgeable legal counsel for businesses of all sizes. Founded by Jonathan Hawkins, our firm specializes in corporate law, real estate, litigation, and more. To learn how we can become your trusted legal advisors, visit www.yourlawfirmgc.com and schedule a free consultation today. The law firm GC. Law done right.
So, question, it sounds like you said your biggest hire was the marketing assistant. This may be the same answer, but looking back over the last, let's call it 5 to 10 years, what were the 1 or 2 biggest impact decisions on your career, looking back on it, that you made?
Yeah. I mean, part of it was the marketing hire, but taken from a different perspective, it was really the focus on making marketing one of the, major pieces, one of the major legs of the stool, so to speak, of the business. I had I'd worked previously at a firm that did no marketing and needed to do no marketing, or at least what you would consider marketing in the traditional sense, right? The owner of my previous firm, he went and spoke at conferences. Of course, I now recognize that as, probably the best marketing that you could possibly do, but he didn't run ads, and there was no social media. And a lot of lawyers kind of see themselves as above social media, or at least they certainly did 10 years ago. They saw it as like, kind of stooping down. And even today, it drives me crazy, Jonathan, but I hear so many lawyers like bragging about, oh, we do no marketing. We get all of our cases from referrals, as though that is like a good thing. And really, now I understand that means that you are leaving cases on the table. You are making it more difficult for the person that needs your help to find you. It is one thing to be very good at what it is that you do, and it's a totally other thing to, be able to effectively communicate that to the people who need your services. And so, really kind of, wrapping my mind around the idea that, you are doing a service to your future clients by letting them know that you exist and that you know what you're talking about, and kind of sharing information with them on the front end. All of that is marketing, and part of that is, social media and newsletters, or even just picking up the phone and calling a former client and saying, hey, how are you doing? Just checking in with people, and all of those things fall under marketing. It's not just, putting up ads on Google. And so that was, a huge unlock to how I viewed my firm, and me viewing my firm more as a business than, just a law practice that doesn't do marketing.
Well, you've gotten pretty good at the marketing piece, I got to admit. Now, let's talk about this. You recently released a book about how many weeks ago now?
Gosh, probably 4 weeks ago, the book came out. It's called The Prenup Prescription: Meet the Premarital Contract Designed to Save Your Marriage. Yeah, and
I've got my copies over here. I got one. Yeah, it's a good book. And so I know you've been talking about it. What kind of reception have you seen, or have you noticed, or can you tell yet?
It has been such a fantastic reception, way beyond my expectations. We hit #1 on the Amazon bestseller list in our categories. We have tons of reviews on Amazon, great reviews and great feedback that I've gotten. A lot of them are from people that know me, but there are people that do not know me that are reaching out and saying this book has been a game changer in terms of the information they've learned. People who are already married, are getting something from it. And yeah, I just want to continue to get the message out there. Really proud to have gotten this out into the world.
And the book's on prenups. And I will say, I think you've got an interesting approach to prenups that, I don't have a prenup. I don't really know much about it. I know a little bit about it just because, I'm a lawyer and whatever. But your approach to prenups, I think, is very creative and unique and cool. Some of the things, and you can talk about a few of them here if you want, but, the agreement to have certain meetings and counseling and things like that. I didn't know, maybe that's a common thing that's put into prenups. I just thought it was about money, but I think that's pretty cool stuff. And I think when people hear it and learn about it, their interest goes up, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, before I knew, how deep prenups could go, I had the same misconception that most people do, that you're just planning your divorce settlement before you get married. And that's the extent of it. And it was really, in my practice working for the last law firm, where I was working on a prenup, and the attorney on the other side was negotiating a lot of the things in terms of, what's going to happen during the marriage itself. I mean, when you think about it, it makes sense, right? Like if a prenup says, you keep what's in your name, I keep what's in my name, and we split whatever's in joint names, that could either be a super fair arrangement or a super unfair arrangement, depending on what that couple does during the marriage itself. Like, how does the income flow? What is going into the joint account versus our separate accounts? And so really kind of leaning into, what couples do during the relationship has informed my approach to prenuptial agreements. And as lawyers, I think that, sometimes we feel like we can only advise on this one thing, like we can only negotiate the divorce settlement, rather than, taking all of the information that we've learned as divorce lawyers. I've tried I've litigated, over 1,000 divorces over the course of my career. And I've learned some things that, couples need to know going into their relationship. I'm a believer that, things don't go wrong, they start wrong. And what I learned from my divorce practice is, a lot of what couples were arguing about in their divorces stemmed from them not setting up their finances correctly on the front end. And so I can't draft a prenup without telling the client, certain things that I just know to be true from my experience. You can't go Dutch for life. That's not going to work. You can't have two people living in the same household with different socioeconomic brackets. That's not going to work. And so kind of, having the opportunity to help couples on the front end structure their finances to hopefully have a successful marriage, as well as if they get divorced, they're not going to spend, a quarter of their net worth and a year and a half of their life in a courtroom fighting over, the remaining 75% of their net worth after the attorneys are paid is, it's certainly a worthwhile endeavor for me. And you can see why I'm passionate about this.
Well, yeah, I mean, the passion comes through, and it, I feel like your years of litigating divorces, has taught you, hey, there's a better way to set this up. And I did the same thing for partnership agreements for law firms. I call them prenups for law firms. That's what I call them. And it's, I've done a lot of law firm breakup cases, and every time I do one, there's some new little nuance that then I'm saying, all right, we're going to put this in the partnership agreement to make sure it doesn't happen next time, or if it does, we're going to minimize the fight over it. And I'm passionate about that, and I can tell you're passionate about, helping people avoid some of the messes that might happen in a divorce. So, it's clear. It just comes out of you, that you are just sort of, it seems like you're a natural entrepreneur. Would you say that from early age, you were sort of an entrepreneurial person, or is this something that developed later? Do you know? Have you looked back and thought about it?
Yeah, only in hindsight can I look at things from my youth and see them as entrepreneurial. I was definitely, from a young age, I sold, Christmas cards door to door in my neighborhood to get like the little cash and prizes from those things. Whenever my two older sisters had like fundraisers for the band or for, their girls groups, they would just hand me the box of M&Ms or candy bars and set me loose because, I had no problem going door to door and, selling those things. So, certainly there were some things that were entrepreneurial, but, I got locked into the idea that I wanted to be a lawyer at like age 12 and put my blinders on and really didn't look to either side. Now looking back, I definitely see myself probably more entrepreneur than I do even lawyer in terms of just kind of, my identity. I mean, obviously, I'm a lawyer. I'm always going to be a lawyer, but entrepreneur is probably the stronger part of it. And turns out that serves you better if you're going to be the person running the law firm.
Yeah. So, you said you knew you wanted to be a lawyer. It sounded like earlier you mentioned you wanted to go to some big New York law firm. But other than that, I mean, did you have in your mind that you were always going to have your own law firm? Is this something you knew, or did that sort of evolve along the way as well?
Yeah, not at all. I wasn't really exposed to a lot of people who ran their own businesses, certainly not their own firms growing up. And so it really wasn't on my radar. I looked at my employment career as having jobs. And it was really having that break from the workforce and being able to step back and, kind of recognize that this type of path puts me a lot more in control of my future and my time and my lifestyle. And certainly it's not for everyone. There are downsides, no doubt, in terms of, you don't have the same certainty and some of the benefits and, those things and not having to make all of the decisions and, set schedule. I say you have more control over your time, but you may have less of it at the end of the day compared to having a job. But for me, the trade-offs have been worth it. I definitely didn't see it coming. I feel like I kind of stumbled into entrepreneurship, the same way that I did into family law. But, I think just having, the inclination to take that risk has paid off. And maybe that is a trait of being an entrepreneur.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I have used you as an example with other people. And I've told them how impressed I am with you, that you gave up a successful business and pivoted to do something else. I've mentioned that to more than one person. Good stuff for sure. I'm not.
Thank you.
It's impressive. I mean, it really is to me, because you build this thing up. You spend all this time you building your baby, and then you say, all right, I'm passionate about this other thing, and you're betting on yourself, which I like, and this leads sort of to my next question, because you are taking risks, but there have to be moments where you're thinking, did I make a mistake? Is this the right thing? And so how do you deal with those moments when you're like, okay, did I make the right choice? What is it you do? I need to know personally.
You are 100% correct. That I think most people would be lying if they told you that they didn't have some kind of doubt creep in. I think that I've got fantastic support. I've got a mastermind group that's been going for 15 years. So I feel like I've got kind of my own board of directors that I meet with every couple of weeks. And there's some entrepreneurs in that group, knowing other, lawyers like yourself, getting together and, sharing a meal and comparing notes and, talking about, how we're going to, recognize that I'm not in this by myself, even though entrepreneurship can feel like a lonely game from time to time. And then, my wife obviously is my greatest supporter. She, whenever I say, we didn't get any new clients this week, the sky is falling, like I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to start, driving Uber. And she'll say, she'll remind me that, I've been worried, about the growth of the business, basically every few months since I, first started my law firm in 2015, and that it always works out. I'm not, we're not going to starve, things take a while to grow, and, really focusing on my inputs into the practice rather than the outputs of what the practice gives me is something that I think has given me back some sense of control in this uncontrollable world of entrepreneurship. And, focusing on what I can control and what I do every day and, kind of what my habits are and what my practices are, what I spend my time doing, doesn't leave a whole lot of room for doubt on the side if that's your focus.
I like that. Focus on the inputs. That's good. So what types of things do you focus on every day? You don't have to tell us every detail, but generally speaking, what sorts of things do you focus on to grow the firm?
Yeah. I think that one of the best superpowers you can have is knowing what to spend your time on. Many of us can work hard, can put our head down and, churn through task after task. One of my things that I do every day is I look at my to-do list and I try to prioritize what are the most important things. And I distinguish important from urgent, right? Because a lot of times what feels like the most important thing is answering the email or hitting the deadline or something that, somebody wants a response right away. And I try to reframe my bias towards important means something that is going to give long-term value. And so something that is going to pay off, a year from now, like drafting a video, putting in video or putting in writing, something that clients ask me, every single time that I work with them, putting that down in writing. So from here on out, when somebody asks this question, here you go. I've written a guide. I've written an entire 5-page guide on it, or I've drafted a video. You can watch this video and it will answer your questions, and focusing on things that are investments in the future rather than just, checking off the boxes is something that is proven to pay off for me.
That's huge. So let's step back. So you're where you are now. You've lived through a lot of stuff. You've done a lot of things, probably learned a lot of lessons. If you were giving some advice to yourself 15 years ago or to another young lawyer out there that, wants to start a firm or grow a firm, is there any advice you'd give? One or two or three?
Yeah. I mean, probably the biggest thing is to recognize that, you are running a business, right? For some reason, lawyers have this thing where they do not view themselves as business people. But if you are in the business of serving clients in a law firm, you are part of a business, and to recognize that all the parts of a business that normally exist out there exist in your law firm. you got the marketing, you've got the HR, you've got the sales. And sometimes lawyers hear marketing and sales and, treat them as dirty words. You've got the accounting. And if you are not skilled at these things, then you need to bring people in that are skilled at these things for your business to thrive. And so, getting away from this idea that law firms are just lawyers and paralegals and maybe a receptionist is something that I think many young lawyers and small firm owners that I know need to grasp sooner rather than later if they don't want to end up hating their business.
So let's go back to your firm, your current firm, prenups.com. What's the long-term vision? Where do you see this firm going, or where do you want it to go?
Yeah, we want to be the biggest provider of prenuptial and postnuptial agreements drafted by attorneys nationwide. And we are building out our network of attorneys, partners in various states across the country as quickly as we can, while still bringing on, the right people into the organization. And that's where we're going. We have 9 other partners besides myself, covering 17 states right now. Hopefully that number will be even higher by the time this podcast airs. And our plan is to get into the majority of states early in 2024.
Wow. And so, I commend you on this. This is great. It's going to be fun to watch. It's the balance between extreme growth and, keeping the wheels on the race car while you're driving it. So yeah, it's going to be fun, but that's the fun part, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is the flip side that should not be lost in all of this is I really am having fun. I've definitely been one of those people that rolls my eyes when people say, oh, if you're doing what you love, you're not working a day in your life. No, you still do work,
Mm-hmm.
But, this is something that I am having a lot of fun with. It is not boring for sure. Running a business like this is new and challenging, but that means that it is continually interesting, and I'm having a lot of fun with the things that I'm learning.
So here's a little curveball for you. So you mentioned when you came back from South America, you were thinking about some other businesses or something like that. So if you weren't practicing law or you weren't running a law practice, what would you be doing? Do you know?
Stand-up comedy. Yeah, no, funny enough, that was my life goal before I decided I wanted to be a lawyer in 6th grade. And my parents breathed a sigh of relief and said, yes, lawyer, yes, that is something we can be proud of having you do, and really encourage that. With everything that I know now, I definitely think I would be running some kind of business. I think that I have some of the traits of an entrepreneur that I probably didn't recognize, earlier in life when I was, really focused on just being a lawyer. But definitely some kind of business. To me, it's like putting together a puzzle, and you turn this knob and you tweak this lever, and things start working. And there's nothing more exciting than watching something that you built yourself from the ground, from scratch, turn into something, a real entity. And I get a lot of gratification out of that. So yeah, I'd be a business person in some form.
Well, I have a prediction that prenups.com is not your last business venture. There's more. I have a feeling there's going to be more. So you got to think through that. You got to think, what's it going to be? Maybe it's stand-up comedy. That's taking a risk. That's taking a big risk getting up on that stage.
Yeah. Maybe not ready for that. Maybe not that big of a risk, but yeah. I mean, I'm loving this so much that I don't ever see necessarily me not doing this, but I could see myself doing additional business ventures on top of this. So let's hope your prediction is correct.
Yeah. Well, we've been going at this for a while. Appreciate you coming on. Before we wrap up here, why don't you tell people where they can find you? You're probably on social media. I think you mentioned to me before we got on, you got some other things in the works for early next year. Why don't you tell everybody where to find you?
Yeah. So, number one place, obviously, you can find us at prenups.com. That's the website. We've got all kind of resources, videos, a free ebook, all on the site. You can buy the book, The Prenup Prescription, on Amazon.com. We've got links to that from the website as well. And then on social media, I am Prenup Guy on Instagram and your other favorite social media platforms.
And you've got a podcast coming out early next year, or are you going to get into that game? I know you're on a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of podcasts. It seems like, the natural progression of things. So we will have to see. Stay tuned. You'll be the first to know. You'll be a guest on it should that come to fruition. So, yeah.
Well, I encourage you to do it. You should. You're good at it. So again, I appreciate you coming on, and look forward to grabbing lunch or something in person soon. So
absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been an honor.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Founding Partner Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on the latest episodes. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn and check out the show notes, with links to resources mentioned throughout our discussion, by visiting www.yourlawfirmgc.com. We'll see you next time for more origin stories and insights from successful law firm founders.